All right, so now we're going to transition to the main meat and potatoes of our program today, which is our sermon and our offering song. So Mark's going to be playing our offering song shortly, but I did want to introduce our wonderful sermon giver today. Who here knows Sammy? A couple people know Sammy. Well, Sammy's right here in the front. Sammy's going to be giving our guest sermon today. And when I asked her, how she wanted to be introduced, I realized that I don't know so much about Sammy, but I've always looked up to her in the community. She's a mother. She's a professional, a really sharp professional in her industry. And she is pregnant right now with her third born. So we're really excited about that. Our due date is December, so please keep her in your thoughts and prayers. And when I asked her what the sermon was going to be about today, she said it's about changing your reality, right? Changing your environment, and some practical advice in terms of how to do that. And I'm a very practical person, so I love practical sermons. So I'm really excited and pumped for Sammy. So let's all give her some good support, and she'll come up right after the offering song today.
So good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I have a little bit of a raspy throat. I'm getting over a cold. It's not COVID, don't worry. I got tested just to be safe. But yeah, so if it's a little bit rusty, sorry about that. So if you notice something funny with the song is the subtitles are not in English. The subtitle translates to the true love of God. And so it's cool because if you look for worship songs, if something's not touching you, just try a little bit different. So I was looking up Dutch worship songs in English, and I'll tie that into the sermon because there really is a point to this. And you saw something new and something beautiful, but you would have never found it if you hadn't tried something completely sort of different. So, and then I'll explain why it's in Dutch because I have a Dutch spouse and I speak a little bit of Dutch. But first, I want to introduce myself. My name is Sammy Vanderstock. I'm pretty local to Denver. I grew up here, and I'm a mom of 2, almost 3. I am 7 months pregnant, so I'm definitely in the thick of it. But yeah, my family has grown up here, and if you remember, my older brothers have actually given sermons in this past year, Gilo and Yangil, so I guess there's a bit of a theme going on here. But I just wanted to say that I'm happy to be here. I'm hoping that what I'm going to talk about today can speak to at least a few of you, that God can work through me. And the topic today is about change and your environment. So if you think about change, there's a lot of different changes in your life, right? So sometimes change happens when you don't want it. Sometimes it chases you, it just keeps happening, or the same issue comes up again and again and again. But I want to talk about a type of change when you want to change, but you don't know how. And that's what some of the advice is today. So specifically, we're part of a faith community here, right? And the question is, how do we achieve all the goals we've had? And I feel like in this movement, we have a lot of goals, right? We want to save the world. We want to restore every living person that's ever existed. But even on a smaller level, we want to help make Denver a better place. We want to make our families as close to perfect as possible. We want to raise beautiful children. And so sometimes it's a question of how. How do we actually do any of these things? And I know everyone in their life has specific goals, depending where you are in your course or in your journey. But for me, one of the frustrations I always had is I think our movement gives us a lot of ideals, but the practical part of what do we do to achieve those ideals, sometimes that's difficult. And it is hard because everyone's going to have a different course, a different journey. But I'm hoping today that a couple items I'll be sharing can help you on your journey to achieve your goals and specifically your spiritual goals. So before I start into that, I want to start with a story that ties back into how we can achieve our goals. So I am a mom. I'm right in the middle of young children. And so I want to talk about the birth of my first son. And I'll keep it high level, don't worry. So from when I was pregnant, I was terrified of giving birth, like absolutely terrified. And I was more scared of giving birth than actually having kids, because all you hear about is how horrible it is, and it's the most painful experience you'll ever have in your entire life. And all you hear is these horror stories. And when I Googled labor, I didn't put anything else into it, but I just simply Googled labor. This is the first picture that popped up on Google. So pain, right? Negativity, hurts, it's not good. And so I was thinking about why was I so terrified of birth, right? And if you think about it, if Google shows you the first image of something scary and negative, if you look at TV shows or even the US culture of pain, it's something that is out of your control. It's something that someone has to fix for you, and it's something that is bad. It's just a bad thing overall. And so if you think about a lot of times in your own goals, maybe why is something hard? It's actually because people have told you it's hard. They are telling you you can't do it to the point where you believe that you cannot do it. And so what's interesting is the entire 9 months, I didn't believe I could give birth. I thought I would need like 10 doctors holding me down. I would need like all the drugs just knock me out and it'll just happen. And it would be something I would just have to survive and endure. But I didn't want that. I didn't want to be in pain. I didn't want to be scared and fearful and crying. But the question is, I didn't want that, but how did I change my reality that I would not turn into what I was positive would happen to me? And so what's interesting is during the time that I was pregnant with my son, I actually was not living in America. I was living in the Netherlands. So I'm blessed or married to a Dutch person who's in the back watching one of our kids. And so we actually spent almost 5 years living there. And so when I was in the Netherlands, I was very surprised to find out that their concept of birth had nothing to do with the American concept. It was 100% different. And so for them, it was very normal, it was natural, it wasn't that bad. And a lot of women were like, yeah, actually, it really is not that bad, and it really can be really beautiful. And I was like, really? I've never heard this before. And then because I was living somewhere else and everyone was telling me it's actually not that bad, don't worry, it's a natural process, it can be really good. I started Googling stuff, and I didn't want to put money into it because there are all types of like courses or things you can do. I literally YouTubed like positive birth experiences, and there's a lot out there if you look for it. And then I actually eventually got a book. One book that was just saying that actually it's like graduating school. You work really hard. It's not easy to go through, college or vocational school or learning something, but in the end you graduate and you're proud of it. And like birth can kind of be like that. It can be something hard. You can't just pretend it's not a difficult experience, but something you can be proud of and like wear as a badge of honor. And so what happened was I actually, without going into the details, had a beautiful, positive, and confidence-building experience through the birth of my son. Up in the right is a little Dutch tradition where you eat anise seeds. It's like anise seeds. It's a certain spice on crackers. But there's a little quote. I like to think of birth as a dance between mommy and baby. The most romantic and peaceful dances linger for a while. So it's just an entire idea that it doesn't have to be bad or scary. And the interesting thing is, even though I had a positive experience, I didn't believe I could do it until it was done. So I wasn't like, I'm going to do this. I'm inspired. I have some new books I've read, and I'm in a new country, so therefore it's my reality. That's not the case. It only became my reality once the accomplishment happened. And so looking back at this, the big thing I realized is change in your environment is actually about changing your environment. I'll say that again. The big thing about change in your environment is about changing your environment. And so I want to talk about this in terms of spiritual rules, about if we can take a few steps to change the environment, you can get wildly different outcomes to the goals you're trying to achieve. So I'm going to kick right into the practical parts. Looking back at my experience and how I ended up having a positive and beautiful and something I'll never forget and never regret experience with my son, what happened that actually made that happen to me? And so the first part is actually the intercultural experience. Living in a different country definitely helped. I have to say the Netherlands is actually is the number one country for natural births in any developed country in the world. And you can imagine being in that sort of environment gave me the confidence that it was possible, because when you see other people living your goals, it becomes real. And you begin to see that it is possible to do something different. And if we think about our movement, I feel like we're the movement of intercultural experiences. So this is just a quick quote by our True Father, Reverend Sam Myung Moon. International and intercultural marriages are the quickest way to bring about an ideal world of peace. Things that would take seemingly forever can be accomplished like miracles through these types of marriages. So this is actually a core tenet of our faith. This is one of the big ones, is that we can create world peace through intercultural marriages. And so if we look at our movement, we have all types of races or religions. So even though I'm white, my father's Jewish, my mom was Buddhist before they joined this movement. And it's all about melting everyone together. And there's many reasons for that, right? Father Moon talks a lot about the spiritual sides and restoration. But practically, getting exposed to another culture can teach you a new reality. It can give you ideas you never had on your own. Or living in America, there's certain concepts. And if we think about spirituality in America in general, the feeling is kind of negative, right? The majority of young people are, if not atheistic, don't want to be assigned to an organized religion because they've seen many negative things. But even if that's a reality in one place, it doesn't mean it's the truth. And so by having experiences with other cultures, you get to see that the truth is not what you think it is. It can be something better or something different. And so if you think about spirituality, I don't have a certain culture you should go to, but definitely expanding your horizons. If you think about the goal or something you're trying to achieve, surround yourself by people that have already done it or aren't intimidated by it or aren't scared by it. For them, it's normal. So in terms of birth, it happened that being married to someone who's Dutch was the perfect culture for me to be exposed to, because for them it was what I needed to hear. It was what I needed to see as a reality for it to become my own reality. And then the second part is that once I got inspired seeing people around me living something that was different or living something that I wanted to achieve goal-wise, that's when I started Googling free stuff first. I didn't really want to invest in it. I kind of like dipped my toe in the water. But I started reading. And it's not just reading. It can be watching videos. It can be, reading comic books or something that has something to do with the theme that you're looking to achieve or the goal you're looking to achieve. But it's about education. And so if you think about our movement again, this is actually a core tenet, the other core tenet, or one of the core tenets of our faith. It's this way. So we do have a practice in Korean. It's called Hundoke, but it literally translates, I guess, to reading and learning. So I'll read this quote. In our church, Hundok, reading and learning, is important. In order to live with the history and live for the future, one must know where we go, and through Hundoke can you learn the benchmark. So this is another core tenet of how to live a faithful life within our movement. And once again, there are many reasons, and the one I'm going to focus on that has to do with achieving your goals is that how do you get new ideas? How do you change your reality is by learning something new. And so if you're reading books or watching videos or studying something that gives you new ideas, it can challenge your existing ones. And so I want to give you a couple new spiritual ideas because this actually drives deeper. It might sound practical, right, that you need to change your environment, but actually there's some really deep principle behind this. And so this is actually a concept. It's called synergy of grace and effort. And so it's a spiritual idea that the relationship between divine grace of God working in your life is combined with human effort. And so Thomas Aquinas, one of the early Christian saints, called this synergy, that effort calls forth grace and grace prompts effort. And so if you think about our responsibilities, is actually a key concept that we might not be able to actually change our reality, but when we take that first step, when we do what we can, then God's power, wow, makes you tearing up, God's power can move into our life. And I wanted to say that this book's actually pretty cool. So if you're looking for some new book or content to read and studying, there is a book called World Scriptures. And this is a search of sort of universal religious truths that come up in different cultures or different religions that all point to the same truth about God and God's nature. So in this book, I found a very cute quote. God gives each person a hook with which to pluck his fruit. So this is actually not a unification concept. It's pretty universal. This is an African proverb, but it's this entire idea that you need to put a little bit of effort forward, and even when you don't believe it, that's how you open the door for God to move into your life. And there it is in the Quran, same idea. God changes not what is in a people until they change what is in themselves. So it's all again about what can we do? And it can really be very little, right? In my case, I moved to a different country. That's not necessarily practical in everyday circumstances, but trying to expose yourself to new cultures or new ideas or people that are in line with where you want to go, and then studying a little bit. It was those two simple steps that actually gave me a different outcome that I didn't even think could be possible. And then this is a little more detailed. So this is what Reverend Moon said. in 1981. You must participate in God's great creative undertaking. God alone cannot bring about human perfection. Each person has the responsibility to make a contribution in perfecting him or herself. So this is, once again, it's a little more clear here that I really like the word creative undertaking, because sometimes change can have a very negative concept, like it's something you're battling against, like an uphill struggle, but actually it can be a beautiful process of discovering or changing yourself to become something nice. And for God to be part of that creative process, it's about putting forth the little efforts you can in your life to let him, to open the door to have God work in your life. I'm actually almost completed, and I want to give you guys some sort of practical recommendations. So even though I don't know what everyone's current journey is or what your spiritual goals are, I want to leave you with a couple ideas as if you're looking for general, how can I overcome something, or how can I challenge something, or how can I become a more spiritual or more God-focused person. I have a couple of recommendations of just some books that might help. They're pretty popular. It's nothing new, but I just kind of want to remind you that if you're looking for a first step and you don't really know where to start, maybe this can help a little bit. Who Moved My Cheese? This is actually a pretty historical book. It's not new. It was published decades ago, probably. But one of the famous quotes from this is, "The fear you let build up in your mind is worse than the situation that actually exists." Right? So if you think back to my fear of birth, it was this like torture. But actually it wasn't. And having this sort of idea, having these changes in my environment and self-education, you can help to eradicate the fear. But this is a very popular book. You can Google it. You can look it online. This is a little more practical. It's not necessarily spiritual. But if you're looking for a good starting point, this is definitely one of them. And it's a very famous book, so I can definitely vouch for it. One more time. Okay, so Guillermo Martinez also recommends it. This is also a pretty old book, or it's nothing new, but it's a pretty popular book, and it's called The Road Less Traveled, and it is about spirituality. Problems call forth our courage and wisdom. Indeed, they create our courage and wisdom. So sometimes if you're looking for ways to how to maybe live a more spiritual life, or how to have a more positive environment when you're trying to live a faithful lifestyle, this can definitely help. It is, once again, by a psychologist, so it's not necessarily going to be like reading our Hundakays, which is a lot of kind of very spiritual religious content, but this is definitely about how to help you become a more spiritually enlightened person and how to create habits that help you to become the person you want to become. And finally, The Art of Happiness. My mom actually has this on her bookshelf. If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. So this is really, it's out there. And so sometimes when people are struggling with how can I change, it can really be as simple as starting these little steps, reading books, finding things that encourage you or support you in your journey. And there is a lot out there. So hopefully these three can be little starting points. But this is, once again, also a very deep book. And I like this picture because you don't know what the future holds. It is quite unknown, but it's also really beautiful. And it's majestic. And this, I don't know, it feels like God's looking down at you or something. But I have to say once again that if you want, or if you're looking for how to achieve your change, really the simplest areas are to start changing your environment. So number one, to expose yourself to different people culturally, or people that are achieving the goals that you want to achieve, and to educate yourself through content, through Hundakay, and overall trying to find ways to give yourself a new vision of reality, and then usually the reality will then follow, even when you're not expecting it. I wanted to end with that, and please join me in prayer. Dearest Heavenly Parent, thank you so much for this opportunity we can gather here today on a Sunday. I know that we're all going through ups and downs, or even this year has seemed to be particularly challenging. but we know that you're working in our life. And sometimes all you need is a little more of an opportunity for us to allow you into our lives, that you can do miraculous and amazing things. So I pray today we can think about what we can do to create a more healthy environment, a more positive and spiritually encouraging environment, and that through that we can begin to see the grace and the power of your glory. After this prayer, everyone's here in our names, in my own name. Bless Central Family. Aju. Thank you.